Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez. If you want to support the podcast, please head over to the louperez.locals.com and join the Lou Perez community on locals.com. I'm really happy to be joined by my next guest. He's a good friend in comedy. He's a hilarious comedian, awesome writer, producer. He does it all. His name is Ryan Long. Ryan, thank you for joining me.
Fellas. You're on the locals. You went for locals though, huh?
I did.
Those guys are hitting it hard, man. That guy emails me like once a month. How do you like it?
I'm like it. It's new for me because I'd never done like a Patreon or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I really like it in that the people, I only started not too long ago. So the people that are in it, we're actually communicating every day. So it actually feels like it's actually doing its job of creating a community. And I think like with a lot of like Patreon stuff, it's people are so used to just supporting the artist and then just sort of waiting for the work to come out and then just watching it. Where with locals, like they can post in the community, they can post on the page, which I think is cool.
Whenever you see those YouTube guys that are kind of just like printing cash, you're like, what's going on here? It's like, it's always back to the, like, we created a community. They created their own little country, the like Logan Pauls of the world or these guys.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, with everything going on, if it's like, I mean, it seems like that's just the necessary thing to do. I mean, the amount of people that I know that we're Facebook friends with, and I'll see posts for them like, man, just came back from my 30-day, stint in Facebook jail. and it's almost like, and you're coming back, like, why would you, like, why do we do that? Why would we ever want to come back to something that is like, it's like an abusive relationship where, oh, I said the wrong thing, so now my chick doesn't want to be with me for a month,
For sure it is. But I mean, the obvious answer to that is that, that's where conversation takes place right now, right? It's if you're banned from, that's why this stuff that just happened is so the implications for it are so great, because there's like, if they remove you from Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, all the main ones, and now you're just, best case scenario, yelling into a void and BitChute, and you go, oh, well, I can talk to my 5 people on this Discord server. It's like, okay, well, now we're taking that down. And it's, you mentioned like the 30-day jail, but to me, and I'm actually I was interesting to sort of hear your perspective, like the libertarian take on all this stuff. But like, to me, it's like, if you, murder a guy in some scenarios, you do 20 years and you come out, where there's like 16-year-olds that, get carried away in some things, say some crazy stuff, and they're essentially banned for life. So you have if these kids are 20, some of them might have a 80-year sentence of, not being allowed to be part of public discourse. And to me, that's like crazy.
Yeah. No, we've definitely seen recent examples of that. There was that one girl, I forget what her name was, but
Donald Trump.
There's that one girl named Donald Trump. Before we talk about Donald, this girl, she was I guess a high school student. She had just gotten like her driver's license. Maybe it was maybe it was her learner's permit. Like, I don't even know if it was like an official driver's license. And then she made this little post and put it on Snapchat, and she said the N-word. She was a white girl who said the N-word, and some, I guess, classmate held on to that for a few years, and then put it out, and essentially just kind of destroyed this young girl's life. And the New York Times, I think, did a story on it as well.
What was their story like? Justice served?
It was something. I think the word they used was reckoning. There's like a reckoning here. And what was so wild was, I think like maybe the week before, there were all these people calling for this young man to be taken off of death row. This man who had been a part of a murder. It's like him and a group of other kids like set this couple on fire, like set their car on fire, and he was on death row. And all these people were like, look, it's wrong to sentence this man to death. And it's like, I wish I could see a Venn diagram of the people who defended this dude to try to get him off death row, and people who said like,
yeah, I know.
this white
they're
bitch
like
needs a
hypocrisy.
reckoning. Yeah.
The hypocrisy Venn diagrams right now are almost like, it's one of those things that's almost best not to think about at this point because it just like hurts your brain.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like there's people that, you know, were holding conflicting positions. At some point there was like some attempt to rationalize the inconsistencies, where nowadays people are like, you're like, well, you didn't say that last week, and they're like, yo, shut up. Like they don't even pretend to, you know, care about the fact of like being consistent in any sort of way.
And it's crazy because now we have a digital paper trail. Like you can go back 10 years and be like, hey man, I remember 10 years ago you said, you said the Knicks sucked and now you're a Knicks fan. What's up with that? Whereas before it could just be like, oh no, I never said that. There's no proof. There's no evidence. It's like, but you put your own evidence.
But it feels like they still do that, where they just go, no, I didn't. And then you go, here it is. And they go, nope. They all do like the Donald Trump thing where he just like, nope, didn't happen. You move on.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like with a lot of this stuff, I almost maybe cared too much for a second. Then I, went back to, just being a comic. But when this stuff was happening, I feel like the thing that kind of gets you fired up the most is when it feels like there's just so much gaslighting. When it does feel like they're like, oh, so what? This happened. Oh, whatever. You're making a big deal out of nothing. And it's like, maybe, but like when you think about it, you go, no, this isn't nothing. And you go, oh, you're pointing out hypocrisies. That didn't happen. And you're like, I saw it. It really does feel like, like in the girlfriend analogy you're saying, like I saw you at the bar making out with this guy, and it's like, no, you didn't. Oh, stop it. You're such like, look at you. You're being like abusive and you're so toxic. And you're like, I saw it. And it does kind of start to feel like that with a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, which I feel like that's the part that kind of makes you, jazzed up about it.
Yeah. And it's a thing too, where nobody, or some people at least can't give an inch. And it's like there are many times where I'll be like on social media and I'll put something out and someone will call me out and I'll be like, oh, you know what, I actually got it wrong there, my bad.
Okay.
Like I personally would feel embarrassed.
Racism isn't good. I actually.
Oh yeah, that's right. My fucking autocorrect, man, messed it up. Yeah.
Women are capable to be doctors, contrary to my post 3 weeks ago. Avidly against that.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where, people will have stuff up or will, come and argue and make a number of factual errors, like within like the first sentence, that I would be fucking embarrassed to have up there, to just have there in the world. I'd be like, oh man, I can't believe I got that wrong. My bad. Let me try to fix that, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to keep it up and then try to pivot into something else.
Yeah, I get pretty stressed out when I screwed one up. I did a video recently, not a couple months ago, but it was about morbidly body positive fashion photographer was the video, and I said that Seth MacFarlane voiced the role of Stewie of Chris Griffin, and the idea was that should have been played by a fat guy, not Seth MacFarlane. And every comment was like, that was Seth Green that did his voice, and I was like, I like lost sleep over that. I was like, I'm stupid.
And you think of like, imagine the amount of or the lack of integrity you need to have to be like someone working in the media, making a huge mistake and just like deleting your comment.
Or even just like the changing of stances, like, just even if the last little bit, like the people are like, can you believe someone called for, violence or some sort? And then there's like 80 clips of them being like, burn it to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you, crazy? Yeah. It's nuts. Anyways, as far as like the Twitter censorship and all that stuff, that's what I wanted to kind of hear your take on it, because obviously this always goes back to the publisher platform thing, and there's everyone sort of has a catchphrase answer, like, oh, they're a private company and they're comparing to the gay cake thing, which I don't see that like as the same thing. But how do you see this in like the idea that these kind of companies colluded together, deplatform someone and then in unison got rid of apps from the App Store and all that stuff? Like, how do you see that And what do you think should happen to now that I've taken over your podcast and I'm interviewing you?
Oh, when you put it that way, Ryan. Well, I think a previous guest that I had, Phil Magnus, he's a historian, and he's a really great follow on any platform. And I think it was
Phil
on
Magnum back in heat.
on Facebook. He had a really good point, where the sort of like the more nuanced view is, you have these platforms that like every day are contending with government officials who are basically saying we're going to take you over, or we are going to make you bend to our will if you don't do X, Y, or Z. Like if where you'll have like
you see it kind of in, you're going down the line of the idea that, well, yeah, it's not really private companies when they're that entangled with the government and lobbyists, and
or they're being called in, to.
There's pressure from above to sort of do what they want you to do, or else they're going to have these rules imposed on them.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that that they should be the arbiters of what's a fact and what's fiction, that that they need to be dealing with, they have billions and billions of segments of information coming in every single day or week or whatever, and that they need to, it's their responsibility,
they're getting it from both sides,
to say what's true and what's not. On Facebook, man, like when I was doing stuff with We the Internet TV, there were a bunch of things that we put out there that got dinged because they had, I guess, like a political element to them, as if we were, supporting a candidate or something like that, and it's like,
which, like, why can't you do that, by the way?
Oh, right. No, right. Yeah. Why can't you do that? But it's sort of like the amount of things that get caught up in this net, when it seems like they're trying to please a lot of people. They're trying to protect their ass. They're trying to protect, their investors. But
I feel like I'm a little less, I do understand maybe I'm a little less like sympathetic to these like tech companies, in the sense that I see, I kind of agree with, I think it's David Sachs said this, but essentially free speech got privatized, right? And now you have these 5 kind of oligarchs that control, the flow of information, and there's no repercussions. You know what I mean? They have this terms and service, and essentially they can make decisions arbitrarily, and there's no, for example, like if you have a private business or a private, company or whatever, like you still can't murder someone inside of that business. So, people have rights, and, speech should be one of those to some degree. So, the idea of like an online bill of rights, it's like, there are still, like most of these places still defer to like US law for, you can't make threats. And like, they didn't invent that idea that you can't make threats. Like that kind of comes from somewhere. So I think those are the negative rights or whatever, but the positive rights, I think, should probably be factored in there too, if you want to be, if you want to be a private company operating in that space.
I think that's interesting. And especially when you're dealing with, these platforms that treat different countries very differently. Like,
of course, right?
Platforms that have helped oppressive regimes, basically, tamp down on political dissent. It's like those are the same people you're dealing with, except we are fortunate enough to, to be in a country with some more protections than that.
Yeah. I mean, our censorship's just coming from a different place, but it's like, it is that the point you brought up is like one of the most confusing parts, and why I think this was, such a, overreaction on these parts, and especially the collusion. And again, there's, public will and there's political will. So, I do get your position to be like empathetic with, this isn't one person of these companies. This is just going on like how the machines run at this point. But if you go, like in America, it's like, okay, we're going to put this information out. We're going to put this censorship, and we're going to influence the election a certain way. Because obviously, if you're getting rid of Donald Trump, you're, whatever, we're going to make our statement. But it's like other countries aren't going to be down with that. It's like, you're going to tell the Ayatollah that like, oh, 2 weeks before your term's done, we're going to like take you off Twitter. He's just like, okay, no more Twitter in our country. So, I mean, this idea that we're going to take the free countries and start censoring them. It's like, so essentially just any other country that has any sort of like, a stronger power government, they're not going to allow fucking a bunch of goofs in Silicon Valley to decide what they say to their people and whether they deem it appropriate. So it's like it's going to create such a mess that I feel like, that there's no real solution out of this. That's like free market, kind of at this point, at least the way I see it.
I think you bring up a great point. One thing I want to say is that I'm not so empathetic or sympathetic to the companies. I was just,
you love them.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to have empathy to love somebody.
Tattoo on his fucking back.
Oh, you got to see my basement, man. He's all over that shit.
Yeah, it's just like vintage, like Facebook stuff, and like how people used to collect Coca-Cola. That's you with like old school social media stuff.
Oh, dude, I got my MySpace bobbleheads and all that. But I think you really paint an interesting picture, because it's sort of like, these platforms are so beholden to all these other countries, and even with the example that I gave, them having to answer to those in power here, it's sort of a similar thing, and it's just going to be. It's going to be one of those things, just like we were talking about early on, about, the hypocrisy where, the Chinese Communist Party is still going to pump out propaganda on Twitter, and people are going to be like, what the fuck? What's going on? I think a guy recently...
You're going to dox journalists, just do whatever they want to do. And
right.
Twitter's not going to do anything about it, but it's, here they feel like they can... or not even feel like, maybe they feel like they have to, do this, but it's like, that's why there has to be some, in my opinion, it's like the same thing. Like the scary part about all this stuff is the like fear of having no, it's like living in a country that, to me, when you live in a country where it's like, what happens if you get caught stealing? You're like, it depends on like what the king's mood is. You know what I mean? And it kind of feels like that. It's like, well, what do you do if you're innocent? And you're like, nothing, they get rid of you. And if you're innocent, like, what do you go to their box and appeal. So some guy could like reject it. And on top of that, and this is, I guess, the part where it's like, at some point you just like realize you can't do anything. And it's maybe that's what it is. It kind of reminds me of, when when canceling like first started hard, and it would be like, okay, this guy got canceled for whatever, like maybe something with girls or something. And in the case that someone who's been innocent, like you'd be the guy being like, I think everyone's wrong. Everyone just be like, shut up. No one cares. Like, no one cares if they're in, like, no one gives a shit, dude. Like, we're happy that guy got fired, and that's what it is. It feels like that with this, where it's like, everyone's just like, sweet, this is awesome. At least a lot of people. So the public will is like awesome, which always happens. So no one cares. Right. So it's not going to get sorted out by public will to, fix this problem, because people don't see it as a problem. They're like, yeah, we actually trust these people. So they align with us right now.
Well, also, I think it goes beyond that. I think people like it. Like, they
love it.
They love it. Like the fact that Donald Trump is no longer on Twitter, people love that, because the people who hate him don't want him to be on there.
Well, it's the equivalent of finding a guy that's like a pedophile, and then like, getting everyone on board with the idea, like, so you don't think we should kill this guy, and be like, and then someone being like, I don't think you should kill the pedophile, and be like, oh, you love pedophiles, and you're like, all right, you know what? Yeah, fine, kill him. And then they're like, okay, from now on, we can kill criminals. It all kind of, you always find like a linchpin that everyone agrees with to sort of set precedents.
Yeah. And it's something where I always take notice of the people who, sort of are taking the same culture of free speech protections to the private sphere, where it's like, look, I don't like this guy, but I still believe that he should be on this platform. And that he should have even like a cultural protection of what he's putting out there.
I'm even going like, I feel like I'm proposing something that isn't even like free speech absolutist. I'm more saying that like people, they should be able, of course, platforms should be able to kick people off, but it's the idea that they all move in unison, and then there's no way to, there's no real clear, concise terms of what your rights are and what they're allowed to do and what your rules are. Like, they're all very wishy-washy. I mean, we've all been there where it's like you post one video and it gets taken off and you're like, what, that video? And then you post something else that seems pretty edgy and that doesn't come down. It's like, it all just feels very arbitrary, and it probably is. You have people just, they get complaints and they look at this. So it's the like arbitrariness of something that is become, the place that, people spend 5 hours a day on, the pub town square, as they say, or whatever. It's the idea that like that can be arbitrary. And I'm not saying it's a right. I don't know what it is, but it's the fact that that can be like arbitrary taken away from you. And it's like fundamental part of how everyone communicates and everything. It's like, I don't know. To me, it's something that needs to be investigated. A lot of these places don't know what they're doing either. Like the government can't keep up with these tech companies. It's like you see these, government people grilling the tech companies, and it sounds like my dad like asking me about, I don't know, fucking, how I can't think of a good example, how a Discord server works. And isn't there bad stuff on there? And you'd be like, listen, you don't really understand how they work. It's just what it is. And so you go, and the same reason that like a lot of these big companies can exploit all these like tax loopholes is because they don't really know how to tax these companies, because the thing changes so fast. It's a little bit of like the Wild West. And I think that this is the same thing where it's like these companies these people in charge of regulation for the most part don't even understand how these companies work, how they profit, like how this infrastructure works. And they're in charge of like this problem of who gets to speak now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And a couple of things on that. So, one of the things that I noticed when they were having like congressional hearings and, bringing in like Zuckerberg and other people like that, is just how ignorant, the government officials were. They were questioning
these guys are idiots.
No, but then what it made me think of is I was like, wait a minute, this is just a congressional hearing on the internet, social media, Facebook,
imagine
Google.
Some other shit.
Imagine all the other stuff. Imagine like there's somebody right now sitting on,
because he has a Facebook account, at least some other shit.
Oh yeah, like somebody, somebody's handling his his online platforms. But now imagine like this. Now you're gonna have a bunch of people talking about energy, a bunch of people talking about foreign policy, and it's like the same amount of ignorance, right? And just on it,
so they just look to consensus, that's all they can really do, and try to appease what the consensus appears to be on their side, probably.
Well, even look at look what the response has been when Trump was kicked off. It's like the same people that were angry with all the social media platforms for getting this dude elected are now cheering the same platforms for kicking him off.
Yeah,
and it's like. It does, I got
they were saying, exactly. They're saying like Facebook's like getting involved in politics and helping the other guy win or whatever. And now they're like, hell yeah, Facebook getting involved in politics,
helping the other guy, I do wonder, because when did you start putting stuff on YouTube? Was that like right at the beginning or?
Well, I've been so I've been in America for like a year and 3 or 4 months now. But before that, I was making sketches, the same as you, forever. But I was like you in a lot of ways that I wasn't doing it on my own channel. I had a series at CBC, and then I made some TV shows in Canada, and I built up the video department for the Hard Times.
Unlike me, you actually had commercial success.
Well, I mean, I like what I was doing at the Hard Times and CBC, although CBC is like a bigger company, but in Canada, like it was similar. I think me and you were kind of like doing a fairly similar scope when we met. Like the videos I was doing at like CBC and the Hard Times, and the stuff you were doing at We the Internet, probably like somewhat similar budgets, and kind of having like a decent amount of online success. I felt like we're fairly in line in those videos. And then when I moved to America, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this on my own channel. So probably about a year ago, I started posting like just on doing the same thing I've been doing before. Which is I assume like kind of what you're planning on doing as well, is just I did it for my own channel.
Yeah. Well, I bring that up because I don't remember, what I signed or what the agreement looked like the first time I posted something on YouTube. I have no clue, but I think
they can change it. Like they can change it willy nilly.
That's what I was just about to say. I wonder if there's a case to be made where it's like, look, when you're talking to like a creator, or like some of these like real mega YouTubers who have, a billion fucking views. And it's like, wait a minute, this material I made before this change, like I didn't agree.
Well, they've had that. That was the big thing at Patreon, wasn't it? Like that was the big case against Patreon, essentially, is that they changed their terms of service and were, adjudicating based on the new ones that people didn't sign up for, kind of thing. I think what you just outlined has been a lot of court cases.
Do you have any idea how those turned out?
No, I think that Patreon won though, because I think there was like an Owen Benjamin one, and I think that he won the case that like allowed him to sue them or something. And then I don't know, maybe they settled. I bet you a lot of them settle. I'm gonna go with that.
Okay. Just on the Trump thing, again, it's sort of like everyone's cheering, yeah, he's gone. But a lot of crazy shit has happened, and there's still a few more days to go. I'm just thinking, like, I want to know what that guy is thinking. I want to know what's going on.
And he still can do his press conferences, and he has the POTUS account. And the truth is, like, people to some degree wanted blood, and a lot of it. But there's just, it's one of those things where, I understand the idea that, like, this is what the will of the people wanted, that, at least a fucking lot of them. But there's just a reaction that's appropriate. And, that's why we have laws. And what was the reaction that was appropriate? I think potentially if Twitter said, you know what, we're going to block his account for like a week and a half, it might have been like, people would have been mad and this and that, but it wouldn't have been like a precedent that like changes the way that everything happens. Whereas like now it's like, hey, every social media platform is going to ban him. And if he wants to go to talk somewhere else, we're actually going to remove them from the app store. And it was like, you're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like straight up monopolistic. They have a monopoly on speech and they're working, they're colluding together. It's like when you talk about the gay bakery thing, I mean, the biggest factor when you're dealing with like, discrimination or any sort of, whether you can serve someone or not. I mean, obviously there is one part of like what you make and if it's actually a departure from what you make. But the second part of it to me is how easily can you access an alternative? So if you go, when you're talking about the cake thing, for example, if you go, there's 20 other bakeries on this block, and you specifically came to this one and whatever. And you're like, it doesn't seem like, just from a strict perspective, like if it was talking to your friend, you'd be like, okay, like I understand you want to teach them a lesson or whatever, but there's 90 other bakeries or whatever. Right. But if someone said, listen, there's 10 other bakeries on this block, we're all gonna, we're all in this group together and we don't serve this person. And then someone else says, well, I'll open up a bakery to serve gay rights. And then the landlord's like, no, I'm not going to give a lease to someone who wants to do that. It's like at that point, that to me is like somewhat more similar to like what the situation is.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you. The ability to have choices in the matter and access to other.
Well, that's becomes a monopoly at that point, right? I mean, it's the whole, to me, that's kind of like, I guess what would be more in line with like how you think, if you're going to point out like the problem is it's like, unelected oligarchs have a monopoly on speech right now.
Well, yeah. And also, I mean, I've been dinged how many times for hate speech.
Right.
And
he's always like, talking shit about the white man.
I've been, and it's like, I would definitely prefer if these platforms were adhering strictly to,
the amendment.
Yeah. The First Amendment. I think that would be terrific for me in my life.
Yeah.
Because you even think about it, I mean, the amount of people that have been kicked off, and it's like, it's not like they've been,
Yeah, and every country has their own version of that. And then, that would be, to me, somewhat of a simple way, period. Because like I said, like every country has their version of that. You're allowed to block people, there's that part of it. And that sort of solves worldwide what the thing is. It's, countries are allowed to set their speech terms, and then, social media can operate within the limits of what the government sets their speech terms as. And that becomes like a cultural conversation of what those are.
Well, you,
as opposed to like an arbitrary decision made by like a couple of fucking people.
Right. Well, you talk about, you're coming from Canada. Maybe we could talk a little bit about, speech in Canada or lack thereof, but also what is like, the stuff that you're doing here in the US, does that leave you open to any prosecution or
I don't think so, but also like, and I tweeted that thing that kind of like went viral. I don't know if you saw that, which
one?
I immediately regretted. I'm like, stop tweeting serious stuff. It was like the first time I've done it in like 6 months.
Oh wait, I think I know what you
said
did.
That I moved from a country that didn't have speech to a country that used to have free speech. I was like, dude, my whole Twitter was people arguing for like 2 days straight. And it was just like, dude, there's all these like famous people, like, oh, I can't remember her name. Like, Patricia Arquette was like yelling on my wall, dude. It was wild, and I was like, "Stop this, Ryan! Like, you don't like stop it. It's not like what I want to do."
You got Patricia Arquette riled up, man.
Yeah, so I have like a no arguing on the internet policy, and I still never argued, but it was a little. I kind of regretted tweeting that, but the truth is, like, it doesn't really actually affect you for most normal people. So, but Canada, it just all is a line. Like America, it's not so much the law of free speech, it's like the culture of freedom that kind of comes with it. So in Canada, the thing that actually started to hit people really hard was there was a human rights tribunal that if you say something bad about someone or a group or whatever like that, that you can be fined by the Human Rights Tribunal. So Mike Ward got fined $50,000 by talking about some kid. And I mean, for 90% of people, 99.999% of people, like they'll never, reach those margins one way or the other. And when they choose to prosecute, like there's usually, some political will about it. But it's like, it's the downstream effects of like those precedents that, seeps into everywhere. And when you talk about like, that guy, like that Mike Ward guy, he's pretty popular, right? So whatever, it became like a publicity thing for him to some degree. The same as like how Jordan Peterson, was kind of fighting the fact that if you call someone the wrong pronouns, you go to jail or whatever, right? But then those became, a part of their fight and whatever. Whereas like, but there's also like a few people that were just like some comic that said the wrong thing on a show and he actually did get fined like 50 grand or something. That's just like some barback that does open mics. So there are, cases and no one cares about those, right? So there is a whole component of it, but like the truth is like it's not like whatever you feel like you're stifled speech wise, but again, like things weren't as tumultuous in those days either, right? Like it used to be before it'd be like was your joke too edgy, but now it's like, is your political opinion the wrong thing? Like since like since the allowable speech got like politicized, it's a lot testier right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great segue into a question that came in for you, Ryan.
Not gay is the answer.
Oh man, this guy's going to be so upset.
It was one summer,
and this woman is going to be upset too. Let's see. Have you received pushback, personal or professional, from making videos on controversial topics?
Yeah, obviously.
And I could have answered that question too.
Yeah, no,
you could have addressed that to me.
Yeah, you've had the same thing. You've had your article about it that you recently. Yeah. Yes, all over, but the truth is, it's like I said this before, but the 99% of the people that are mad like work in the entertainment industry. So whether it be like comics or journalists, like normal people just think I'm funny. Like they don't. And again, right. I don't say I'm on the left or the right. I just say I'm like a comedian. I think I change issue to issue, and those words change so much that it's hard to even like keep up with what their side thinks these days. But the pushback all comes from people that have an agenda, and a lot of people don't. And so when you go to like watch my shows, it's just a bunch of normal people and they don't care. And they're like, what? I thought it was funny. So even when the comedians, I'll see some comedian getting like super hyped up, posting like Ryan Long's bad, this and that. And I'll be like, just so you know, like 10 of your close friends, like message me saying my stuff's funny. Like, right. So, and normal people, you go to a comedy club, they don't care. It's just, there's this like extra layer that people want to add into the mix where they say, you go to a comedy club and it's a contract between you and the audience. Like you make jokes your conscience feels good about, and they'll laugh whether they think it's funny or not. And they want to add a third level of themselves, this like elite class that gets to watch that and be like, yeah, I know that you made the joke and they laughed, but I'm going to come above and say, yeah, that shouldn't happen. And you're like, well, everyone seemed fine with it. And you're like, well, they're wrong.
Yeah. A friend of mine, he describes
Hall monitor class.
A friend of mine describes it as, it seems like over the past few years, a bunch of people who hate comedy have tried getting into comedy. Like they've tried to infiltrate it. And I was on a panel. I think it's supposed to air at some point this month. And a question that
they also hate competition. They hate they think that whatever people actually like, they're wrong, and it should be sort of manufactured.
And it made me just question, like, what is it that people want when they go to a comedy show? Like if you go to a live comedy show, what is it that you're trying to get? If you put on a feature film that's a comedy, like what is it that you want? I know what I want.
Which is what?
I want to laugh. I want to have an uncontrollable reaction to something that I saw.
And for a lot of people, it's not even that deep. Some people, it's like, I wanted an event to go to because I have a date tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're not even thinking like, oh, I hope this is funny. They're thinking, oh, I guess we could go to a movie or a comedy. Like it's nothing for a lot of these people. Right. It's like, and that's for like comedy fans are like, oh, I want like a catharsis laugh that I couldn't, control. And that'll be a spirit, there's something great about that. And for a lot of people, it was like, what do you want to do tonight? On our date, okay, you want to go to the bar tonight? Yeah, you want to go to the friggin' the Stand first and watch a couple comics? That seems like an event. Like some people, it's not even as complicated as like they want to laugh. They just want something to do.
Well, also I think with the with the popularity of podcasts, I've seen like a lot of comedy specials come out, and not every comedy special is like a masterpiece, but obviously, but watching some of them, I'm like, oh, I could see like this is a really likable person that has a really big following, and people want to watch him or her for an hour. They want to hang out with that person for an hour. It's sort of like
totally. It's an experience, especially once they're your fan. So that's the difference between going to see someone that you're a fan of versus like here's the comedian. But definitely when I remember that when I was like younger, and I did like tours with like guys like Steve-O and like some of the Jackass guys and the guys who did what's that movie where they're cops, Super Troopers, I think. There's some of those movies where it's like they almost like weren't really comedians even at the time, but it was like people just were pumped to like see them. And I felt the same way when Tom Green first kind of started doing stand-up again, and I was such a Tom Green fan. I remember, and I just started doing stand-up, and I remember watching it and being like, he clearly kind of didn't know, he wasn't that great at stand-up. He was pretty new, and he was just like doing a lot of rap songs and talking to the crowd, and I left being like, yeah, that ruled, dude. Like, you know what I mean? I was just like sick to see him.
Yeah, I got to see Charlie Murphy up on what's that place on the Upper East Side, like 80th and I don't know if it's like 2nd Avenue. Is it the
Stand Up New York?
No, it's I think it's Comic Strip. It might be.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They just shut down.
But I got to see Charlie Murphy there a long time ago, and I thought he was just like his brother Eddie. I thought, oh, I go to see this guy. He's a seasoned.
He started stand-up when he was really famous already.
But that's when I saw him. So he wasn't, he wasn't.
I bet you was a lot of big act outs. That's what I'm guessing.
All I remember, he was talking about, I just remember one thing where he was like, if he forgets to cut his toenails, he has to fuck with his socks on.
I love it. I love crappy black comedy. My favorite. Dude, I love it. I remember me and Ian Fidance were just talking about this, the idea that because we're always like, oh, do you remember this like on Def Jam? And I'm like, I'm super into those old Def Jams. He goes, this is how much cooler black culture is. He's like, there is not two like hood dudes right now having a discussion about like some old Evening at the Improv clip. Like, you remember that Ray Romano joke? Like, right. The way we are talking about their stuff, but I think it was Marlon Wayans or Damon Wayans, one of the Wayans brothers, like one of the like the youngest one.
Okay.
And he did a new special, and he comes out and he's got like, they're always decked out in like really cool clothing. And he starts within 2 seconds. He was like, when you're at the club and you like really getting on the floor, and he was within like a minute, he was on the floor, like humping the floor. And you're just like, oh, this guy's got nothing. He has no jokes. We're a minute into the special. He's rolling around on the ground. This guy is killing time.
Well, dude, I mean, everybody knows hamburger.
Yeah,
Whatever that act is. When I was living in LA, I got to do a few black rooms. One of them was at a club.
I love it.
One of them was at a club called the J Spot, and that was really cool.
Good
and that was a legit club. Then the other ones were at it's basically in Englewood, and in Englewood they didn't have bars. They had drinking. They had I forget they call it, like drinking houses or something like that, or they were like private clubs, private drinking establishments.
Okay.
So this guy, Dwight Beverly, he had Dwight Beverly's Comedy Splash. So I was I was like, like the one or two like white people on it. And it's already like a tough room, but I think they like kept the music on the whole time while we're trying to go, and people were just bullshitting with one another and stuff. And I mean, I forget what my opening was. I think it was opening like, I want to thank Dwight for adopting a white boy or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then you obviously went into, white people drive like this, black people drive like this.
Oh yeah. No. White people don't drive. We Uber. That's what
there's black people, and then there's
yeah, exactly.
The Chris Rock.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I was trying to do my Richard Pryor at the time. You ever be looking around at white people and shit? White people be driving and shit.
Oh my God, that's pretty good.
Damn, Jack. Yeah. So
that's a good. Can you do impressions in general, or is that you just do a Pryor?
I think I could do a few.
What a skill! I can never.
But I think I always do like a version of them. Like I gotta like, for me to do Pryor, I have to add "and shit" after.
It's all, half of it's like saying the word. Yeah, like
damn,
finding.
Jack. Yeah.
I can find the words, but I can never get anything else. And then even if I do have it, even when impressions, like I want to do a Russian accent, which is very easy in one of my jokes. And it would be like, I would get through like one sentence and I would just be like, lose it completely. I'm so bad at I'm notoriously bad at accents. Like
I've done bits where I'm obviously channeling George Carlin. Like I'm obviously trying to.
You got a little bit of that in you.
Yeah. Like I need more stuff. Like, sort of that, sort of Carlin.
Did you see who's been well, there's two things, but the first one, I don't know if you saw, but like Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, he's like super based on Twitter right now. He's like constantly out there.
Well, I just saw the one quote or something like about cancel culture. And
he's always coming out.
Yeah.
Bean's fighting the fight.
Well, this is one of those things. This is one of those issues too. Kind of like, people getting thrown off of social media where people are like, oh,
I thought you were going to say buildings for being gay.
What? Buildings for being gay?
He said people getting thrown off, and I said,
no. I'm going to talk about ISIS at this a little later on today, but
still on Twitter, by the way. I don't know if that's true.
But you have these people who are like, well, it's the free market and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, they really don't mean that. Like, there's no way that they would actually defend that if it was somebody that they like. But like with Rowan Atkinson, and I only saw one of the like one sentence or something that he put out there just about the dangers of cancel culture, and people like, oh yeah, like Mr. Bean has something to worry about. And it's like, you motherfucker, like is that what you say to Colin Kaepernick? Oh yeah, you really have to worry about police brutality, rich guy.
I mean, they do, some of them, so you are right. To be fair, they do.
Yeah, I actually think Kaepernick was arrested a little while, some years back when he was still playing.
Really?
He was like charged with something. I think maybe
that's how it started. But yeah, there is no shortage of hypocrisy on the other side as well. But because I mean, it is. But you're right. The same people might say that to like LeBron James. The same, but the same thing as to Mr. Bean. But it is. But to be fair, Mr. Bean's probably like, let's say, you could look at it two ways, right? One is Mr. Bean is saying that cancel culture is bad. I'm not saying it's bad for me, because there's one thing when like LeBron James kind of says like, this is a problem for the black community and this and that. But it's kind of another thing when he says like, I'm worried for my life. And you're like, I even me, I'm like, are you though? Right. But when he says other people are, and I'm a voice for these people, I get that. So I think there's nothing wrong with being like a voice for people, even if you aren't personally, right. Affected by it.
Well, yeah. I mean, people are always like, celebrities should just shut up unless they agree with me. Then in which case they're like,
in which case, hell yeah, dude. Power to the people. Yeah. Want to know my favorite Mr. Bean joke of all time? It's probably, I think this is, Simpsons, there's like those ones that are, just timeless. So one would be, with Simpsons, it would be free consultation, no money down. And then he says, and then he goes, oh, I'm here for my free consultation. He goes, oh, there's some typos. It's supposed to say free consultation, ? No, ! Money down, ! You're like, that's so funny.
And that's your favorite?
That's one. That's up there, top 10 for me. Wow. And then the Bean one is, so Mr. Bean's at the window. The Bean ones are hard to do because he doesn't speak, but he's at the window with his girlfriend, right? And they walk by this girl. She's on, there's a painting of a girl with a ring, right? It's like a ring store. And Mr. Bean's girlfriend looks at it and she goes, like she wants the ring. And he goes, oh, I got it loud and clear, right? So then they're opening their Christmas present the next day. She opens it up and it's the picture of the girl getting handed the ring. And at this point, she goes, she starts crying, and he goes, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong." And then he goes, "I know what's wrong." And then he pulls out the ring case and hands it to her. And she goes, "Oh, you did get me the ring." And she opens it up, and you pull out the ring, and it's the ring to hang the poster on the wall.
Nailed it. My favorite Mr. Bean one is he goes down to a beach, and he made the mistake of not getting changed into his swim trunks.
Of course he did.
Upstairs, so he needs to do it down at the beach, but there's a guy.
That sounds like a calamity.
There's a guy right next to him, right? So he's like really embarrassed because he's gonna have to get like naked in front of this guy.
Yeah.
But what he ends up doing is like a really brilliant physical comedy routine of putting on
I remember this.
Putting on like a Speedo,
and he pulls it off by the end.
Yeah. So and he manages to get his pants out of his Speedo, and he's all happy. And then we cut to the man, and then the man gets up, and he has a cane, and he's blind, and he walks away. It was great.
Mr. Bean is 10 out of 10, dude.
Yo, you know what's
you guys the best.
You know what's awesome, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a show. It's like a claymation stop motion called Shaun the Sheep.
No,
and I think it's the same people who
sounds like all these people putting masks on to me. What is it?
What's that about, man? You believe it? Huh, Fauci? But it's a kid show, Shaun the Sheep. But it's like in that sort of what's the name of the Gromit? What's the
I know the
like
Gromit Cooper.
But it's really funny. Like it's like some really good smart like slapstick.
A lot of those like kids shows have some really friggin' funny writers on them.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna
Cuomo. Do you see the Cuomo thing recently? This is another funny one for me. So, Andrew Cuomo, the New York governor, came out and he said, we need to open New York back up. We can't financially be closed this long. It's going to devastate our economy or whatever. And it was like, this is something that if you said, publicly 6 months ago, you're like losing your job and friends essentially.
Right.
And now the governor's coming out, and it's like, it's kind of that thing with the hypocrisy. And again, there's nothing wrong with changing your opinion if you're wrong or whatever, but like to not address it, to just kind of say, to act like you haven't been you're the reason they're closed.
Right.
He's like, whoever's in charge of this thing needs to open this puppy back up. And it was like, for the last 8 months, you've been like fighting tooth and nail and calling people, bad that are opening their places up and this and that. And it's like, at least, at least try to rationalize it so other people that follow you can sort of rationalize it themselves, because otherwise they're just, you could say something, even politically, you could say, we've been doing our what we can to stop the spread and, the things near. And at this point, I think we're close enough that we should start. It's like they just spin it in a way that doesn't make you look like we're moronic.
Right. Well, moronic, but also like just incredibly cruel too.
Also that too.
It's just the amount of, the amount of places that have just been, that are gone forever.
I liked that take. It was a million people have said this, and it's like not a hot take, but the idea of like, when Trump got off, it's like free businesses can do anything they want. It's like, well, why can't they open then? Except open. Right.
Well, I was going to ask, you've been making a lot of, political videos, man. I've been doing the same thing,
I like to think of it, what I do is cultural.
That I was gonna add that in. Yeah. More cultural stuff. And I've had this fear that sort of crawls up every now and then, but of like, oh man, am I gonna be stuck like just doing this kind of stuff for like ever? Am I gonna be like the making stuff about politics and culture, where a big part of me wants to do more narrative stuff.
Right.
Not forever. I mean, I definitely want to do.
Well, you could go Atlas Shrugged style and make your propaganda piece.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. That who is Lou Perez instead of who is John Galt. But it's a thing where it's like, do you ever feel like getting pigeonholed into doing this stuff?
No, I don't know. I don't really feel like that, because right now it's all intertwined. I mean, it's very difficult to, just look at whatever, Chappelle or any, huge comic, Burr, whatever it is. It's like these topics are impossible to not talk about right now.
Yeah.
And there's also a difference between like the space of the internet and the space of, broadcast TV or movies or whatever that have like a different, people are, consuming them in a different way. And it's, if you're not, i- if you're not like talking about something that's like somewhat relevant on the internet space, it's tough to sort of, get anyone's attention. And I do talk about lots of different topics.
Hmm.
Everyone has probably their like 5 or 6 things they talk about, but culture is just like one of them. But you can, like South Park, you could say that, or are they pigeonholed into talking about politics? And it's like,
Mm.
well, yeah, a little bit, but they also can do a bunch of other stuff too. So I
Yeah.
think, like I do on the street interviews that I release, and a ton of those are about like nothing, and there's some of them have like an undertone, some of them don't. And my stand up, some of the jokes have an undertone, some of them are just about, like fights with a girlfriend or whatever. Like I don't really find the pigeonholed. But if you're doing like sketches on Twitter and YouTube with like the intent to like go viral in like a shareable way, there's got to be some like vein that you're tapping into.
Hmm.
There's also
Okay.
something to do with the idea that a lot of people like me probably didn't necessarily choose to talk about this stuff, but it's been like imposed upon you.
Mm.
So if there was a point where, like right now, when it's like, okay, there's a very like important cultural, war going on, and the industry is a certain way, and they're very against another thing, and there's this whole thing going on. So if you actually can't participate in the like traditional way. So it's like in some ways, this counterculture has been something that, happened it, regardless of like what you want to do. So you're like, oh, I'll just go talk about nothing, just random stuff. And they're like, okay, good luck with that. So
Mm.
to some degree, it's like if this is a place where, these issues don't seem like important to me anymore, then in that case, that feels like the world's gotten to somewhere where it won't matter anymore. And then everyone can move on. But while this stuff is also important, it's very difficult to like not address like the elephant in the room. And I think like any good kind of like comedian or anyone that's like involved in like cultural commentary probably can't avoid these like huge elephants that exist. So I probably would want to talk about other stuff, but this stuff kind of has to get sorted out first, and us get to like a place in society where people are a little like calmer for someone to come out and just, talk about something completely normal without like a huge, enormous industry push.
Yeah, and you tweeted something a while back, and I forget what it was exactly, but it was sort of like it was in regards to like you're not having a political alignment, but being more of looking around and seeing the people coming after your friends, and
Well,
it's like,
yeah, I think what I said is like a lot of times because it used to be like everything I disagree with is a Nazi. It's
mm,
sort of morphed into everything I disagree with conservative, and then conservative
right, right,
Nazis. So they like to people like to stake their space of what they think is like the acceptable opinion to be, which for them would be like left wing. And then it's the step two is cast everyone out that doesn't agree with the cathedral's list of things, right?
mm,
So it kind of feels like, but what I said was, people would say, well, why do you seem to be like poking fun of the left more? And it's like, well, because you're like the group that seems to have like waged war on me and my friends.
yeah, yeah, and with
Like I don't see a lot of, I do see Christians in some cases and people on the right getting mad at me, but I don't see the like like these people like to talk about like institutional power or whatever, but it's like, but those people don't have the power to have me like removed from, whatever the industry, because it's a, Hollywood's a liberal industry, and kind of cultural media is a liberal industry. And it's like, I happen to take place in those. And I also grew up in this, right? So it's like, if
right,
I grew up in Alabama or whatever, I don't even know references in America good enough to make the right one, like some super religious area of Texas or whatever, maybe I would be, kind of against that more, because that would have been like the authoritarian force that's telling me what to do. But in my specific industry, in entertainment, doing comedy, there's one side that seems to be telling me what to do a little bit more, right?
yeah, yeah, and I describe cancel culture. They're basically telling you to turn your back on people you love who have treated you well, in exchange for people who will eventually treat you like shit and try to get rid of you. And
That's
it's
how it
like,
always happens. It
yeah,
was the same,
yeah,
and again, I remember in Canada, it was the same way the other way 15 years ago. So it's like, that's why I kind of try to focus on like people. Even when I do the videos where I'm trying to say like these two people are the same, I'm always more concerned about the person than I am the like who's the idea of right or wrong. When I'm talking about the type of person that does this and what's their
Yeah.
motivation and how do you get involved in these things and become this person. And I'm more concerned with like that psychology and sociology than I am concerned with like who's right or wrong in a lot of ways.
Dude, I think, yeah, I really think that's the key. Like, if anybody's looking to approach, cultural, political subjects from a comedic lens, it's like, yeah, going after the actual policy. It's like, what's more fun is playing that person, and seeing
And understanding them properly, right? I think,
right.
you see this on both sides, but it's like I think one of the problems with comedy is people are making fun of things they don't understand.
Oh,
Like,
amen.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this when someone's making fun of Trump, it's just like, oh, I'm stupid in this, and and someone's making fun of, I think there's 85 genders, and I'm whatever it is, and it feels like you don't understand them. Where it's like, I think I kind of feel like I try to like know why they think what they think and why they think what they think. Then I can like write them like real people. Sometimes I'm doing it over the top, but I try to write like dialogue that to some degree like lets people know that like it's like when I used to make stuff with the hard times, it's about music or whatever, that
Right.
you can tell when a musician's making those sketches or when someone who's not a musician's making those sketches.
Mm-hmm.
People can tell the difference. Fred Armisen can make Portlandia because he understands these people. So I think one of the thing that a lot of people these days are missing is like an understanding and like ability to like empathize with the position of the like their targets.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I see it all the time when people try to dunk on libertarians, especially with jokes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yo, why don't you just have me write your fucking joke for you?
Yeah, you'd
Yeah.
probably be able to do it better, right?
Well, like one of my go-to jokes for libertarians is like, libertarians, the only thing libertarians are upset about the Holocaust is that it was performed by the state and not the free market.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm in it, man. So I get it, but
What's the libertarian sort of like what's the big like generalization is that you're, because someone said this about comedians the other day and I posted it, but someone was like, oh, I was posting something comedian, they're like, comedians are such fucking drama queens, and I was like, pretty true. But I feel like someone said that about like kind of libertarians too, where it's like they're so over dramatic.
Yeah, I think for a lot of libertarians are just sort of uber rational.
Oh, and then there's that like autistic stereotype where it's like
there's that thing where it's just like one of the greatest fucking things that ever happened is I posted a joke about vaccines on Facebook, right? So I had all my followers who are anti-vax come on and start talking about autism and all this stuff, and then all my autistic libertarians came on to battle them. And like, and look, if you're getting into an argument, you do not want to fuck with people where their whole thing is rationalism and facts. So it was just like a bloodbath of like autistic libertarians destroying anti-vaxxers in the comments. You were talking about how, people saying, well, if you're making fun of this, you must be conservative. And, I found that all the time on We the Internet videos, people like calling me like a conservative comedian, to the point where I found myself sort of like defending conservative comedy, and I'm like, but wait a minute, I'm not even a fucking conservative. But it's like when I hear the charge so much, it's I sort of get like, all right, well, let me start defending
and
it.
And where did you grow up?
New York and Queens.
Right. So it's the same as like I grew up in like the right around Toronto, and it was like, I grew up in a liberal metropolitan, like, playing bands and stuff. I mean, I didn't think like crazy about this stuff. I went through obviously I was like a punk dude, like kind of got into politics, and I had my like university phase where I was, into this and that. But like to some degree, it was like, you obviously just knew, the like stuffy conservatives were kind of, telling you what you can say. And then the liberals were kind of like the cool ones. That was just how I grew up with what it was at the time. There wasn't like a hatred, but there, the conservatives were the ones like cracking down on, speech to some degree of like, oh, the sex and music videos are too bad. I remember Bill O'Reilly. I watched him talking. I remember I seen this recently. He had the Insane Clown Posse on, and essentially Bill O'Reilly was saying the exact same thing the liberals say now, like to a fucking T. He was like, you know, this is worse for society. Like these ideas shouldn't be allowed to be heard. And are what, you know, these are harmful to people's minds who have heard them. And don't you think that art should have like a purpose to make people, whatever, what all the jargon that you hear about the stuff now, Bill O'Reilly was saying all of it like word for word. And I think that those people don't get it at all. And I could like, tell you why or whatever, but more importantly, it's the same thing. So it's all kind of, went full circle in a lot of ways. But when you talk about like whether you defend it or not, it's like, that's one thing that I've gotten the habit of not doing, because if you look at most normal people, they don't like think like that. Like if you talk to any, whatever super woke person, and you talked about like Dave Portnoy from Barstool, they'd be like, oh, that guy's like a Trump guy, conservative. The Nelk boys, they all these, if you just talk to any normal person, they go, oh, the fucking Barstool guy, that guy rules.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I love his pizza review. It's awesome. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's one of those things where you think that like you matter and you think that your thing matters more, and not just you, like everyone. So I think that, and it's so easy to like lose touch with what people actually think because of those like loud people, but normal people don't really, even like Rob Schneider, he's like gone full conservative. He's yelling and screaming on Twitter all day long, whatever. And it's like, if you talk to 95% of people, they'd be like,
oh, Deuce Bigelow.
The guy from the Sandler movies. They don't know. Right. No one cares.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like, like it's almost like living like two different lives,
Yeah, it's strange. But that's the thing about this speech thing and the thing about the cancel stuff. It's like, and I guess it could be good or bad, but like at the end of the day, no one cares. Like if you're the guy that, got caught stealing something and the king's cutting off your hands, and you're like out there being like, isn't anyone going to help me? And everyone's like, no one cares. No one's sticking their neck out. So it just kind of like, that is kind of the nature of the thing. Right.
Yeah. Well, so you do a bunch of different stuff. You do stand up, you do sketch comedy, you do man on the street stuff. We had a question about you doing man on the street stuff. If you've ever been attacked or assaulted or anything like that.
I used to be like way crazier. Like when I was doing my old TV shows, the whole game was like go to places, get kicked out, and get in fights. And I was like a wild boy when I was like, 20, playing in bands, doing this stuff and making like these crazy DVDs of, cops. And I used to be like a master of people coming and yelling at me, and then being able to take the memory card out and replace it with a new memory card without them looking, and then show them me deleting the footage. So that was way more tumultuous then. Whereas nowadays, I think it's, I don't have that as much, but I think people always say one thing. People always say to me, they go, oh, you do 80 interviews to get that one interview. And I'm like, I don't. I like use 9 out of 10 of the ones I do.
Another question someone wants to know is about the t-shirts that you use in your videos. Do you already have those, or do you have to make them?
I have this kid in China that works for me full time, and it's kind of like the monkeys on a keyboard thing, where if he comes up with enough t-shirts, like one of them will strike me as a good video. Like he has just so many combinations of t-shirts, and then eventually one of them, I'm like, you're right, that would be a funny video. So he kind of writes my videos while making my t-shirts from a little studio that I got in Shanghai.
Oh shit.
But no, I just I have a guy that makes my merch that lives in New York. And when I have like a 2 t-shirt idea, I just like tell him like, hey dude, can you make me these? And he'll be like, yeah, I'll pick them up tomorrow. And pretty simple as that.
Right. Well, you took merch to a whole new level when you got that tattoo, right? Didn't you get Boys Cast?
Yeah. By the way, with the t-shirts, it is because I'm doing these like t-shirts for my videos, which is like rule 1 of selling a lot of merch, make slogans, all that stuff. But the problem is all my t-shirts are 2 t-shirts, like woke race. So
you need a buddy. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And no one wants to just wear a shirt that says radical right or whatever. Yeah.
Or just racist walking around.
Yeah. Never Trump, always Trump. So it actually isn't working, because I need to do like 1 t-shirt videos so then I could go sell that t-shirt. That's like the rule 1 of marketing that I'm stupid with.
Also, I'm looking at like the wokest and racist, and it's like, they seem pretty simple to make. Like
Yeah.
the idea of someone's
Takes 10 seconds. Yeah.
yeah, 10 seconds to make. Like, so someone's like, no, but this is fucking Ryan
Yeah,
Long's,
we gotta
man.
have it from him.
This
Yeah,
is
there's
official.
no
This is sweat. His sweat's on this.
no proprietary value. I've
Yeah.
had a few people on my Patreon that asked me to send them stuff, and I did because they donated like a lot or whatever.
Oh, that's cool. Any like
But,
like
yeah.
OnlyFans kind of stuff? Anything
Yeah.
get crazy like that? Dude, I gotta tell you, I think you're the right guy to tell this to. I don't know why you're the right guy to tell this. I just want to tell you. But I don't know if anyone's gonna believe this. I have beautiful feet.
Nice, dude.
I have beautiful feet. Every single girl.
And you're wondering how you can monetize that.
Exactly, because I have beautiful feet. I have a deep voice, and I can.
Beautiful guys' feet don't do anything though, man. You're in the wrong game.
Yeah. Fuck.
I mean, unless you want to go to the gay market. I mean, that's just like what it is.
Well, I mean, if it's just me, just talking dirty over footage of my feet.
To who? Girls? You think girls want to see that?
I don't know. Anybody, man.
No, because I think guys are like so gross that we're that type of guy that's, guys are like, oh, look at that elbow. Yeah. Then we think like, oh, girls must be like that with us. And they're like, they're not.
Yeah.
Some of them pretend they are, but they're not like, oh, look at this guy's knee.
Dude, this is how like gross I am, where I got a sleep guard because I grind my teeth. I got a sleep guard.
Dude, that's so sexy.
No, and I brought it back and I put it in my mouth and I was thinking, oh, dude, my wife's going to think this is so fucking hot. And then I was like, it's like, no,
you're thinking she's you. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, no, I would think it was hot. Like anything, if my wife was in like a fucking neck brace, like, oh my God, it's so hot. Oh, she's in a body cast. Oh man. Ryan, before I let you go, so this is your first year and a little change in the US. You came here. What a fucking year for you, man, to come here.
Weirdest year, yeah.
Not only the weirdest, like the weirdest year, but also like you've been like so successful. It's so great to see.
Thanks, dude.
For people who just know you from your videos, like you put so much into it, man. And I'm so happy to see, just everything that's coming your way.
Appreciate it, brother. There's not that many people that you see that like know how to do the video thing. I see like a lot of the funniest comics, and you watch their videos and you're like, they can't do that. It's a different thing. So that's why me and, you started like chatting even before I moved here. Cause I saw you guys as one of the few people in the world that knew how to kind of, hit that vein and keep the pacing right. And, your casting and the way that even like, you'd always have cool locations. Like I just, you know how to do it. So there's not that many of them in the world, which is cool.
And if any of them are coming up, we got to fucking destroy them. I mean, that's if we can cancel them in some way.
I gotta steal that. There's a few like young YouTubers and I was like, fuck, dude, how much can I pay you to just like be my editor? Cause like, that's the only way, in my opinion, to get like a really good editor is you got to poach a young YouTuber that knows how to do it.
So any young YouTubers out there?
I know one or two, not any. There's a few. Dude, I've only had
you proud.
I've only had 3 times in my whole life that I've worked with an editor that they did something, we did something together and they edited it and I was like, sick, like, yo, cool. You know what I mean? This is impressive. And 2 of them were YouTubers, and one of them was a very popular like director who's kind of done the same stuff as Jeremy had his own TV shows and whatever, all that kind of stuff. And those are the only 3 people that I've ever worked with where I saw that. Everyone else I saw their edit, and you're like, yeah, I mean, you know how to edit, but like, there's no magic here. There's no,
No, I believe that.
You didn't create anything.
Yeah, that's why I've been working with like the same people for years and years.
Yeah, you find someone. It's tough to find another person, especially for sketch comedy.
Right on.
Dude, the same guy made like Tim and Eric, Portlandia. Like that was like the editorial voice of like one guy, So.
Right. Well, Ryan, where can we find your stuff?
I do a podcast called The Boys Cast with Ryan Long every Friday. And I release a sketch every Monday morning at youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy. And my socials, all of them are at Ryan Long Comedy.